Thank you, everyone. I'm Carrie. I am an adult child who grew up in a dysfunctional family, and this group is the source of my strength and hope today. And uh, and I'm very grateful to be speaking to you all and to see your faces today. Um, I am a disintegrated person who's putting my parts back together. I have a lot of entities that can come take the wheel due to my particular wounding and raising and neglect and abuse story. Um, but to give you a snapshot of one entity, a very young person, will kind of take you on a little story to begin. Um, my first sponsor said that he was born in the back of a traveling show, and I love that. So I'm gonna say that. I said that at a meeting yesterday, and that's how I really look at my upbringing. I was born in the back of a traveling show, and my mother was driving that show. Um, but I want to take you to Christmas, um, early 80s, fourth husband, um, big dinner party every Christmas Eve, a big show, a lot of drinking, drugs in the corners of the party, presents under the tree, 25 people at a table for 10, and a lot of excitement. Dinner, fighting, sexual abuse. It was a great holiday, right? Always a big party, crazy stuff going on, kids downstairs getting into trouble, um, parents upstairs being in trouble, uncles, aunts, guests, the latest love affair, um, big group. And as the evening wore on, you have the constant nagging from my family to my mother's brother's family saying, "Oh, please spend the night. Oh, please spend the night. You shouldn't drink and drive. You shouldn't drink and drive." And they, of course, are like, "Oh, hell no, we are leaving. We're not going to stay here. We don't want to be here all night with this crazy bench." And so they head out, and all of a sudden we realize we have 15 minutes to go 35 minutes to church because the most important thing is to put on the show at midnight for the midnight mass. So everyone realizes they're late for church, and so people are grabbing fur coats and bottles of champagne, and everyone's piling out into cars, and this entire dangerous train of adults and children tear out in the snow, heading for church to make midnight mass and to show up as just this great grand story of a family. And three of the four marriages had happened in the same church, so that's always fun to do that in a small town. So we're tearing out, and we trip a speed trap, and mom doesn't stop. We're just hauling ass in this minivan and two other cars behind, and we're now a high speed chase heading into church, and state trooper, county trooper, and this is what it's like growing up in my family. Okay, around that time, we barrel through Main Street, and I'm telling you, three cop cars are chasing three cars, and we're heading into church, y'all. So we pull into the parking lot, and the minivan opens, and the bottles pour out, and the glasses smash, and the other car pulls in, and we're all just making it to the church. And the police pull up, and this officer comes out, and he's screaming at my mother, who's leading the pack. She's in a fur coat, and all these little ducklings are behind her, and we're going on in. And he said, ma'am, ma'am, do you know how fast you were going?" My mother puts her coat around the youngest duckling, which was me, and says, "Officer, leave it on the windshield. I've got to get my family to church," and usher us in. That is what it was like for a fair amount of time growing up in my family. It was a high speed chase. The law wasn't as much fun as our house. Um, Nothing was safe, but it was where we were headed, and and that taught me a lot of crazy was the way to do things because my mom was in charge. Um, and it didn't matter. Put it on the windshield officer. We've got something else going on. And that was there are a lot of things that happened to me growing up. Some of them are horror stories. The earlier time before that time was actually so horrifying that it's a ghost story for me to talk about. I have no loss of memory. But from then on, it was the high speed chase to more and more and more. And there were more. There were more husbands, there were more families, there was more money, there was more achievement, there was more, 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 more. And something in that period of time, from 0 to around 7, 8 years old, and then from 8 years old to, maybe last month, um, my life has been arcing from radioactive to victim to arrogant to devastated to recovery. And I don't think that's ever going to settle down for me. Finding ACA was a miracle in my life. I went into program in the 90s as a battered boyfriend. I was dragged into West Hollywood AA by a beating cocaine drunk who threw me in a meeting and said, "You're a fucking mess. You need some help." And I'm very grateful to that horrifying person for introducing me to AA. I was in that program for the beverage program and then the dust program, someone called it yesterday, which I really love, for quite a while, until I really realized that drugs and alcohol weren't really my problem. I could take it or leave it. People were my problem. And because there was no context and listen, no knocking AA, it's wonderful. Helps millions of people every year. NA helps millions of people every year. That's not my story so much as it was my doorway to recovery. I found that I actually thrived more in Al-Anon. And believe it or not, sobered up more in Al-Anon than I did in AA or NA. Because again, drugs and alcohol were kind of something I did so that I could get real slippery with the interpersonal stuff. And there was no context for that in AA. Only when I started doing the character work, I call it character work, traditions work in Al-Anon, was when I started to really see, and it was years, by the way. I was in AA for years, just kind of going through the motions, really grateful to have a community that was exploring sobriety, it was in Los Angeles. So, we were like, it was a great way to network. I was in the entertainment industry. It was super fun to be like sober and busy. But I wasn't dealing with the workaholism that was coming. I wasn't dealing with the constant need for achievement. I wasn't dealing with the people pleasing. I wasn't dealing with the stuff that really is the core and what would kill me. By the time I'm drinking and using again, I am so far gone that it's probably a good idea for me to sit down and have a fucking drink, because all the crazy had come in first with people, with money, with stuff. All of that I now understand isn't mental illness as much as it is trauma response. All of that was under the hood for me, and constantly operating. So it didn't matter what program I was in, quite frankly, until I was in ACA, that I believe I've started to get radical recovery and radical healing and radical integration. I can slow myself down now, and it's not just a temporary state that I've done on purpose. It's actually a becoming, where I'm becoming present, integrating traits that are part of me are now a joy, discovering wounds and neglects that create aptitudes in my personality, the language that we have in ACA, the Pete Walker work. These are things that I cannot understate if I'm to share my experience, strength, and hope. The mirroring I've received in this community, this meeting, has far and away restored my soul to a state pre-birth. Like so many, I've got baby parts that are struggling. There was trauma in the womb. Being restored to sanity doesn't make any sense because I never had any. So this clarity this new dimension of clarity coming from a space prior to my birth, maybe going back to the blueprint, as some of us have said, is really the way that I have felt this program has affected me. I'm going back to the blueprint. I think it would be important for newcomers who don't know my story to know that there was sexual abuse. A lot of my really heavy physical abuse happened at impossibly young ages, and I'm not saying this to trigger anyone, but I was disintegrated before the age of 7 so many times. And I know them all. I have no loss of memory. I've said this before. I remember the day that I was born. I remember um, my mother being disgusted that I was male and doing something with my penis and pushing me away to the nurse and saying, "Take it away." My grandmother and my sister were horrified to hear me tell that memory one day, saying it was impossible for me to know that. My mother doesn't remember because she was just loaded. I mean, she was, they had had me induced, and I think it was the same day as there was a sale at Sears for school stuff. So she just scheduled it all. The vasectomy for my dad, my birth, inducing it, and the sale at Sears was all kind of one thing. It was a long trip. And I say these things in a snarky way, and I hope they are funny, but they're horrifying, and I used to tell these stories growing up. Arrogant. Oh my God, I was such a criminal as a teenager. Um, and and I thought I was so fucking funny. And a lot of it is humor. And when there's some distance from it written down and the names are changed to protect the guilty or the innocent, and it is funny, right? And that's a gift. I've got that gift to make it kind of snarky, to make it kind of funny. But what's nice for me literally in the last year and a half, is that I don't think it's so funny anymore. And I'm not so interested in being shrill and snarky. Um, I One of the big transformations for me has been to become a listener and not a talker. I will talk more today probably than I will speak at the meeting for months, because what I'm doing at the meeting is I'm listening to you and I am internalizing your stories. And as someone aptly mentioned recently, I'm taking the 1,000 words and piecing together my parts with your 1,000 words. And I don't have to say them all anymore. I used to have to explain everything to exhaustion, not just to myself, but to you. I used to have to finish your sentences um, in order to let you know I was with you, because my desperate need to be connected was so urgent that I had to breathe with you and be there to capture the end of your sentence, to prove to you that I was paying attention. Um, Hypervigilant. I think I've said that I came to this program an arrogant victim. I discovered in this program that I had that other side of the laundry list, that I was a punisher. Um, but it's the punishing stuff doesn't make me come into recovery. It's the being battered and trampled that does. I think it's really healthy for me to realize that, I'm no victim. Um, I'm a manipulator. I'm a liar. I'm a thief. I've got all the things. I check all the boxes usually when we do the readings in the beginning of a meeting. There's one thing I do hate, and I will say this: my sick need for abandonment. Fuck you. Not my sick need. Like I've got some sick need. Fuck that. I don't even like saying it. I never read that thing, and if I do read it, I delete the word sick, because fuck that in the neck. That's what I say. So, I don't like hearing that. I need the gentle stuff. I need to be gentle with myself, even as I am caustic in my own language. I need to know that I'm not fucking sick. I'm perfect. I'm perfectly designed to respond perfectly to an unhealthy, imperfect situation. And so I'm working perfectly. My CPTSD is not something that says I broke. It's something that says I'm so strong, I'm going to match, I'm going to meet the universe with my CPTSD. I'm going to meet it with as much crazy as was laid on me. And if that means a constant chronic response where my body is just pulled to the wires and it's crushing its own spine because my body is stuck in a reaction, it's still not broken. It's my energy pushing back infinitely at that energy that pushed at me. And I choose to believe that we are not broken. We may have a syndrome, but it's not a disease. It's a response that we're perfectly designed. We are perfectly designed. And I have seen that perfection in action in ACA more than anywhere else. And I have said it before, and I will say it again. We are the best of humanity because we are getting up as often as it takes to figure this shit out, no matter how disintegrated we are. And I'm sorry to speak in the we, I shouldn't do that. No matter how disintegrated I am, I don't stop getting up. I don't stop setting the alarm. I don't stop learning to be gentle. I don't stop trying again. I don't stop if I relapse, whether it's my emotional sobriety or my chemical sobriety. I don't stop. I don't stop. I don't count chips. I don't count days because for me, it's a continuum. It cannot end until I do. And these are just some things about me. I'm not speaking to anybody else's program, but I'm so grateful that I found something that I want to be a part of. And that started with Limerick. I can still remember each of your faces welcoming me home in December a few years ago, and each of your faces as you joined the group. I have no loss of memory ever, and I just, I'm always moved by it when I think about it. I truly am home here. Um, and coming into Limerick, I was so beaten down after years of recovery, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. There are no elders in the group. I have news for people. There are no Jimmy, you old fuck, you are not the leader of the pack, man. You're just as nuts as all of us, and I love you for that. Like there are no people who graduate this shit. If you think you've graduated and you've got it all worked out, well, I just hope someone's there to catch you when you realize that you're full of shit. Because this kind of stuff is in the wiring, it's in the fabric. And I hope I never lose my humility. I hope I never get it right. Because all the goodies are in the screwing up for me. I mean, opening my mouth and saying something stupid, upsetting someone, watching someone go bananagrams, that's the best thing ever. Like just seeing it all go nuts. And for once in my life, I'm the quiet one that didn't get in the middle of it. Like that's a lovely feeling for me because all I have is love and compassion for anybody who's stumbling or struggling because literally until I found the silence and the listening and the love that I've got now, and that's one of the promises. I had my foot in my mouth and my hand in the ring, and I'm so grateful to be more of an observer these days than a participant. Not in my own life, because I'm definitely participating in my own life, but in my recovery, I think it's really important for me to be an observer in my own recovery and less of a participant, if that makes any sense at all to anyone. I'm really, really living through the experience of others by increasing my listening. And for me, that's a great stage to be in. It doesn't mean that my hands aren't dirty or that my heart isn't full. I'm really, really plugged in to everyone's story. I thrive on the humanity. And I'm thriving in the struggle. I used to practice a lot of yoga. I used to teach it. I've trimmed that down a bit. A lot of my achievement stuff I've really trimmed down, mostly because there's really nowhere for me to go. It's mostly about enriching the space that I'm in, no matter what it is. And for me, a lot of it is slowing down. But in yoga, I discovered this phenomenon that if you had a really good practice in the morning, it sucked, right? And it hurt. And the earlier you did it, the less your body wanted to do it. And you kind of had so much horse shit you had to do every day. And if you could squeeze all that pain out in the yoga practice, honestly, the rest of your day was on rails. So I learned that like we have to have a little bit of sweat and tears every single day. And you can choose how you want to have that because you're going to have it anyway, right? You're going to have to take a poop. You're going to have sweat. You're going to have tears. You're going to have pain. And we can incite some of that. I'm doing the we again. Sorry. I can incite some of that in a practice. I can share in your pain, and maybe that fills some of my quota. And I like doing it early so that I get that stuff on the mat and I'm present to life. I like to have a theme. I like to have a focus. I like to have an animal come see me in the morning so I can know what the message is. Um, that's one thing as a sidebar I do want to say to anyone who is new and or exploring their other selves, their nature selves, their animal self, their magical self. I know that I was torn apart and put back together so many times before I was 6 years old that I developed gifts as a result of that. That's how I see it. I was unfortunately, and again, trigger alert, I was brought to the brink of death by a mentally ill relative as part of my abuse so often under the age of 6 that I think I just developed this essence of myself that is apart from myself. I'm very conscious in dreams. I can leave my body. I can talk to animals. I can communicate with other realms. That's something that's always been with me. I believe those are gifts from being torn apart and put back together and torn apart and put back together. I don't know if this story is anyone else's story, but I have found that my gifts in pattern, in light, in sound, and in the unspoken, what I have learned is called the anahad, the unstruck, the sound that's always going. I can go in that sound because I had to go in that sound. The part of me that's indestructible was put into that place over and over and over again. And so that's for me one of the gifts of my story. Um, and I don't mention that a lot. I do want to mention it in this forum because I think that's the part of me that is indestructible, and I was put in touch with that early on. So I believe the restoration, whether it's restoration to the blueprint or maybe to some moment where I slipped through the birth canal unfettered. I doubt it. I think I came in all screwed up. But back to that galvanized sterling platinum place of whatever perfection, the blueprint. That part of me is indestructible. I'm in touch with that part. I've always been in touch with that part. In recovery, things like two-way prayer give me evidence of that part. I can tap into that. I believe this is a spiritual program. When I'm on a little Zoom with a few people in this group and we're chanting or we're talking or we're exchanging music or we're reading to each other. Oh my God. I want to tell you to read to each other. I I want to record my writings and share them with people. And I am able to do that in this group. I learned I had sisters to the infinite. I have brothers to the infinite. And I have shitty fucking siblings. You understand that? Like they're shitty, they're horrible people. They're shitty, horrible people. And I don't care anymore. One of the things I got strength in was letting them go. And at first it was go away, having the strength, going through the work, having the grief come out, um, uh, so much trauma that had to come out of my lungs that I ended up having lung problems in recovery. Those have passed. So things like that do come and go. But I had the strength to first be like, go away to these shitty, horrible people that I'm related to. And in that emptiness, to discover some wonderful people that were maybe in my life already that I didn't know because the shitty, horrible people were holding their seats. But first it was go away, and now it's really changed. It's letting bad people just go their own way. It's not even like go away. It's just like watching them float on by. And I can keep them now, at a distance, and they can go their own way. And I am grateful to be able to be close enough to see their own way and to know it is not mine. There's a new stage for me in recovery, and it's not just go away, bad people, but like, oh yeah, that person is mine. I recently talked to my brother, my primary abuser, for the first time in almost 18 years. I never thought I'd speak to this person again. And what was remarkable to me, and a feature of literally the workbooks, doing the steps, the practical stuff, showing up, listening to you all, not talking, but listening, was I heard a wounded person. Every other memory, every other thought, every other projection about him was what an abuser he was. And for the first time, I heard his pain. I heard that he was in pain. And that was a transformation in me. That was a promise fulfilled. That I heard he was still yelling at me. Part of his mental illness is that he just screams at people. He's so fucking dialed up. And when he doesn't think you're listening, it gets violent. And this was something I grew up with. Just had the shit beat out of me by this guy. And for the first time, I noticed that it was that he could not hear himself. And so he was screaming just to fucking be heard. And I heard it as pain. I didn't hear it as offense. And that was a transformation in me that I'm very grateful for. Because I can tolerate now hearing him. And I know that it is generosity on my part, that I can experience that generosity in listening to him. Whether he recovers in his own dimension or not is now no longer the issue, because he can go his own way. It's not an offense to me. That's something that's new for me. I will say, at the worst of my low before finding Limerick, there's one thing I wanted to tell you, and that was that I was low enough to want to end my life. I mentioned this for anyone who is dealing with that. It's one thing to kind of have a bad day. What was happening for me was I was doing strange things. I speak about being disintegrated. I was so disintegrated that there were parts of me kind of casually doing stuff kind of under the radar of my own experience. I was taking my seatbelt off and driving faster. These things were happening under the hood. It just was like, felt good to kind of take it off, and then I would drive faster. I was loading the dishwasher and I was putting the blades up in the dishwasher. I was told you never put the blades up in the dishwasher because you could fall right on it, which is the dumbest thing. Who's going to fall on their dishwasher? But anyway, I was putting the blades up. I was putting them at cattywampus. Um, you know, and it wasn't like I was driving fast without a seatbelt or putting the blades up because I wanted to kill myself. But I was kind of like, if I took that turn wrong or fell, I'd be okay with it. I was running red lights. Not because I want to hit anybody, but if I hit anybody, it'd be okay. I'd be fine with it. That's when I realized that there was something wrong, and there was shit driving that was not okay. Because I was literally another person observing the blades, and I was another person observing the hand that would go down and click that thing. And I still haven't figured out who that was. I think it's that kid who was driving, who was being dragged reckless on Christmas Eves. I think that little shit, around 7 or 8 years old, was just learning a lot of bad stuff at that point, and had maybe had enough from the infant, from the toddler, who'd really just been murdered over and over and over again. So this little criminal, around 8 years old, who really became a criminal later, that was one part that was just starting to reach down and maybe boop, unplug the seatbelt, or when no one was looking, put a knife up in the dishwasher, or maybe if no one was home at all, might even put the cat in the microwave. Not sure if he would turn it on or not. That little kid, that little kid. That was the beginning for me. That was the change when I went from victim to victimizer. And I identified that place in Loving Parent Guidebook. I identified that place in recovery, and I identified that little kid was the one that could flip the switch and put the dryer in the tub. That young, that young, and so figuring out that little monster was driving stuff. It was driving stuff through my career. You're not looking when you're fucking up your life. Typically speaking, I wasn't looking for an 8-year-old. I was looking for an adult. I was looking for like, what the fuck is wrong with me? Well, this quiet little fucking asshole slides on into the driver's seat and unplugs and flips and does and whatever, and that shit's under radar. Nobody suspects the 8-year-old. Okay, that's some Damien Omen shit. And I had to find that child, and that's the child that needs to play. That's the one that needs a fucking nanny. That's the one that I really need to worry about. I mean, because if I'm dealing right, that's when it all changed for me. And I guess what I'm trying to tell everybody is it's that awareness. It's so specific. It's that Christmas. Like I wouldn't have come to that. I didn't come to that in years of not having a glass of wine. Okay. I did that in weeks in this room. I did that in a study group with Olivia and Jimmy and Valerie and J9 and Annie and Chrissy. I mean, I did that in the rooms with you people that I wake up in the morning excited before the sun gets up so that I can see your stinking faces. I am proud to be on your Christmas video. Like I want to make sure I see everybody and can smell them before I die. Nose to knees hugs. Like I did that work with you all in a series of weeks, and it changed everything for me. And I've been in recovery since the 90s, such that it was. So we are the best in humanity. It does take work. It does take workbooks. It takes mirroring. It takes showing up. It takes commitments. It takes dealing with people you may think you hate for a second. And hopefully, if you stick around long enough, if you're the one they hate, it'll shift. It'll be somebody else, and you'll get to sit back and have a smile and see some of your bad behavior on somebody else, and love them. Love them. That's me saying in the we again. We love them. We love them. I was them. I was the them. I was the doofus. And now I still am, but boy, am I at home with the rest of y'all doofuses. Um, and I wouldn't be anywhere else. I really wouldn't. I do want to say that something new for me is a great advice I got from someone was to stay out of triangles, the drama triangle, stay out of triangles. But I will say, please embrace the Trinity. That's something I want to add to that. There's one thing to be afraid of the interpersonal dynamics, and trust me, I have been terrified. My greatest failures have come from falling down in a phantom triangle of my past, but I really want to embrace the trinities that are possible when we combine our positives, our negatives, and our neutrals. And so, I don't want to limit the possibility by staying small. The remainder, as I say, is always something that's unexpected. I get that with you all. I get that through service. I get that by showing up when I don't want to. I get that by talking when I'd rather shut up. And I get that by shutting up when I'd rather be talking. So it's always in that irony that that I find there is the remainder, and it's in the remainder that I'm always given something that I'm not expecting. And I won't do that by myself. We don't recover in a vacuum, and we certainly don't do it alone. I certainly didn't get screwed up all by myself. It took a village. And I'm not going to get better without this village. And I hope I don't get too good. I hope I stay just broken enough to keep my seat. Um and The only thing I've ever written on a wall in permanent marker was 251-353-5828. The Limerick ID on Sharpie. Because at one point in my life it was the only number I needed. And to date, it's really the only one that I have memorized because nobody knows phone numbers anymore. Um, um, but but I guess that's all I have to say. I mean, it's continuing every day. Even just in the meeting this morning, the Loving Parent Guidebook. I had to remember to play because that's not my first choice. Um, and the last thing I'll say is I went to Pennsylvania to get all of my shit that has been there since I went up there and joined this meeting. And just this last month, I finally had the wherewithal to go up there in my lovely motorhome and pick up all of my crap and not have to rent a truck and bring it all home. And I will say that if you quit drinking, please do not get rid of the glassware because you will use it, even with non-alcoholic drinks. So here's to you all. I love you all very much. You have given me my life. I'm never letting you go, and I'm here for you no matter what.